Okay, you're back. I'm back. I don't know what happened. Why did you leave? Do you know that technology overpromises, like cell phones? I remember a time when we used to be able to have good conversations on telephones. And even cell phones used to be better. But cell phones now, how many of you have the problem that cell phones you're in the middle of a sentence and you've been talking for maybe 5 minutes if you like to talk, and nobody's heard you because the person on the opposite end of the line wasn't even there. Anyway, are you back now?
Mm-hmm.
Great. I'm here too. So, your questions. All right. Sam Weiler says, honestly, watched your doc, Inequality for All. Thank you, Sam. It changed my life. I might watch it again tonight. Well, go ahead, Sam. Will you make another one and change the world? As a matter of fact, Sam, coincidentally, there is going to be a follow-up. I can't tell you much more about it, but a week from today, there will be an announcement, and I will tell you more about what's happening, what's coming. But thank you, Sam. I'm glad you like the film. Next, Carlos Felicrano. Assuming Hillary wins the nomination, what do you think it would take for Bernie to support her in the general election? Well, I think if Hillary wins the nomination, Bernie will support Hillary, but I think that he will need assurances that she will, if she's elected president, will come down very, very hard on the financial sector, will increase the minimum wage and fight to increase the minimum wage, will do what she can to support unions, will actually expand Social Security. In other words, he will need some assurance, and it's not just Bernie, but it's all of the people who are Bernie followers and supporters and part of the political revolution will need some assurance that she will actually carry the torch of that political revolution. And she can't simply expect that all Bernie supporters will be as excited and enthusiastic for her if she gets the nomination, unless she does sound and act and commit herself to being a little bit more on the side of average working people instead of the moneyed interests. Now, I'm not saying she is on the side of the moneyed interests. I'm saying that there is an impression out there that because she takes a lot of money and gave speeches and so forth, that she, has a slight, not sympathy toward the moneyed interest, but that she is not as strong and as populist as she needs to be, and she needs to show that, particularly if she wants the nomination and if she wants to get the enthusiasm behind her. Matthew Phillips, a Hillary friend of mine, asked why Bernie's free public college plan was good and mentioned Trump's children. Oh, Trump's children, in other words, Trump would be able to take advantage. Trump's children would not go to free public university, I assure you. I don't know anything about Trump's children, but wealthy individuals rarely send their children to a public university. I mean, they usually send them to elite private universities. I said because education is a public good. Matthew, you are right. Public universities, in my mind, are the crown jewels in the university system, and we need to expand public university education. We need to improve it here at the University of California at Berkeley. I am here because I believe in public education. I used to teach at a rather, shall I say, arrogant institution called Harvard University on the Charles River. I mean, it wasn't bad. I liked it, but it did not it was not a public institution. It didn't educate a cross-section of America. It didn't have much really by way of working class kids and poor students. It basically was catering to an elite, many of whom are going to go on to Wall Street and go on to big management consulting firms and big corporate boardrooms, which is fine, but why should we be supporting them? So free public university education at higher education that are public universities of higher education, that's what Bernie has been talking about. John Brooklyn, Mr. Reich, I would love a detailed, and I mean very detailed, explanation. John, how much time do we have, huh? A very detailed explanation of how Mr. Sanders supporters can truly organize a valid third-party system. Well, John, it's very hard to organize a third party in the United States, because most of the political system is based on winner-take-all. And when you have a winner-take-all system, that is, if you get more than 50% of a state or 50% of a congressional district, you get it all. That kind of winner-take-all system is not conducive to small parties or third parties. Now, there have been realignments. And one of the biggest forces in American politics today is the anti-establishment forces of the working class and the poor. Some of them are mistakenly going to Donald Trump, who is a bigot and has fascist tendencies. Some of them, much more wisely, have supported Bernie Sanders and are joining his political revolution. But basically, if you could ever put the white working class together with the poor, together with the black and Latino working class and poor, together with young people, I mean, you would have a vast majority of Americans who would be absolutely intent on unrigging the American economic game and also making our democracy work again for average working people, for average people. And that's, I think, what we want to, that's what we want to see. Is it possible to have a new populist party? I think it's possible. If neither of the major parties respond to this upsurge, we are going to have a third party. But that's not a detailed explanation. It's not the detail you want, is it? Howard Jones, I would like to see your take on a comparison between the tax plans of Sanders and Donald Trump. Howard, I'm glad you call him Donald Trump, because that's his name. All right, Bernie Sanders' tax plan is a progressive tax plan in the sense that it raises taxes most on people at the very top who have not been this wealthy or had this much income as a percentage of total income since 1918, and by some measures since 1890s. I mean, people at the top are paying lower effective taxes now and have higher percentage of total income and wealth than we have seen in at least 50 years, probably more like a century. Now, so Bernie's plan is to raise taxes mostly on the top. The Drumpf is going in the opposite direction. The Drumpf wants to actually cut taxes on people at the top, and the tax cuts he's talking about are dramatic. We have not seen in this country the kind of tax cuts that the Drumpf is proposing. In fact, we just did a video, and that video is going to be out the end of this week, hopefully, and we're going to compare what the Drumpf tax plan is with the Cruz tax plan, which is almost as bad, and you will see that what these Republicans want to do, they basically want to redistribute income upward. That's what they're all about. That's what they have been about, by the way, for many, many years. Laura Klum, I would like to think, or I would think, with Trump's morals, he has broken some laws in the past. Would it be possible to stop Trump by putting him in jail? Laura, I think you're probably right. I mean, Donald, the Drumpf, if there really is opposition research going on, somebody ought to be looking at his taxes. Of course, he is not showing his taxes, is he? Looking at his deals. I mean, some of those deals are quite shady as far as I can see, and it has been reported. We are obviously needing to know more about it. And putting him in jail, I wouldn't oppose. I would not demonstrate outside the jail for his release. Wayne K. Ford, Dr. Reich, I have a lower back pain. What do you think? I'm a medical doctor? Lower back pain that started when Drumpf began his charade for the presidency. How can I relieve this big pain in my posterior? Wayne, I have the same pain in my posterior. And I think a lot of Americans, in fact, I would say that probably most Americans have the same pain in their posterior. The only way to relieve the pain that we all have in our posteriors that's been created by the Drumpf, let's call it the Drumpf pain, all right? The Drumpf pain, the only way to get rid of the Drumpf pain is to make sure that Drumpf is not elected president, and ideally that he's not even the candidate of the Republicans. I mean, have we ever, I just want to say this one very clearly. In my memory, and my memory goes back pretty far. I mean, my first, I remember the campaign Eisenhower when he ran for the first time. Can you believe how old I am if I remember Eisenhower? My father, who sadly died 3 weeks ago, almost at the age of 102, he went back. He was born in the Woodrow Wilson administration. I mean, he told me not only is the Republican Party worse now than it has ever been in his memory, and that's a long memory. It's certainly worse than it's ever been in my memory, and no candidate has ever emerged the head of leading a Republican ticket that is less qualified, that is more of a bigot, that has more fascist tendencies, that is more inciting of violence than Donald Trump. Victoria Organic, can you explain why we hold primaries if the party chooses the nominee, not the public, as stated by Republican Curly Hangland? Curly Hangland this week. Well, the party, officially, the party is supposed to choose the candidates. Now, it used to be the case before 1968 that there were not many primaries, and the parties were not bound by delegates who were chosen in primaries. Now, that changed in 1968, largely because that was the year, you remember, the Democrats refused to put up Eugene McCarthy and refused to kind of turn their backs on the primaries. Robert F. Kennedy had been assassinated, and the Democrats put up Hubert Humphrey, who had been vice president, but he wasn't even in primaries, and the public really was so angry. It kind of almost destroyed the Democratic Party, and the Republicans and the Democrats both went and pledged that they would have their delegates basically pledged to the winners of the caucuses and the primaries. Now, that's not entirely the case. The Democrats still have a lot of superdelegates. So this Curly Hangland, is that really his name? Republican Curly Hangland? Yes, officially, technically, the party chooses the nominee, but really the public does. It should be done through the democratic process and through the primaries and through the caucuses. Next question. We have about, I'm going to do this a couple more minutes. Is that all right with you? Because I got frozen. I mean, I wasn't frozen, but on your, your screens, I was frozen. Ardith Norman. This Canadian, Ardith, are you a Canadian? You are. How does it look from Canada? How do we look from Canada? Do we look like we're nuts south of the border? We are not all crazy. Ardith? Okay, this Canadian would like to know what happens to the delegates won by the dropout candidates. Well, those delegates are free to move, each party has different rules. If you get to the convention and you have pledged delegates and your candidate drops out, those delegates then can either vote as a block, that has sometimes happened, or they are free to migrate. Those delegates, if they are superdelegates, can already, they are not pledged. They have told their candidate, in this case, most of them, Hillary Clinton, that they will support her at the convention. But unlike the pledged delegates, they really have much more maneuverability. If Bernie Sanders starts winning big, they will probably come over to Bernie. Susie Spear. I'm a huge fan, Robert, but please remove your book. I hate to think you are using this platform of office hours. I like OH. I hate to think you're using this platform of office hours to promote your book. Susie, this is a good book. I'm not going to promote it. Do you think that I'm using this, your time, my time, precious time on this to promote this book that has the key answers to what's happening in this country politically and economically, why there is such an anti-populist surge, why Donald Trump is attracting the kind of followers that he is, why the political revolution that Bernie has started actually will continue for years to come. Do you think that I am promoting this book shamelessly? I would never do such a thing, Susie. All right, this has to be the last question. Okay, Greg Medlin, do you agree that lowering the 90% tax rate on income over $500,000 is what started the loss of manufacturing jobs in the United States. No. Greg, where did you get that idea? I mean, I don't think it is a good idea to lower. I mean, you know, in the 1950s, the background here is the top marginal tax rate on top incomes under Dwight Eisenhower, Republican. The top marginal income tax rate on top incomes was 91%. And even after you got considered all the deductions and tax credits, people at the top, in top brackets, were still paying over 50% on their marginal income. Now, that's much, much higher. You know, Reagan put the highest marginal tax rate way, way down. Right now, on average, people in the top tax brackets, the effective tax rate on many of them is way under 30%. I mean, this is why Warren Buffett has repeatedly said that people in his office, very many of them are paying a lower tax rate than he is paying, and he thinks that's unfair. But look at the reason that we lost manufacturing jobs in the United States is a combination of things. Number one, there was outsourcing abroad. Number two, we've had a lot of technological changes, and so there is a great deal of robotics and numerically controlled machine tools in factories. Number three, there has been Wall Street since the 1980s breathing down the necks of every big corporation saying you've got to maximize shareholder returns, and you've got to do that by what? By pushing down the biggest cost you have, which is your payrolls. And forgetting that workers are also consumers, and consumers are workers. And if workers are not getting enough pay, who's going to turn around and buy all of the things that can be produced? So there are we had an economy in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that was working for almost all Americans, not all Americans, but almost. We were on the way to having an economy that was working for everybody, and now we have an economy that's working for fewer and fewer. All right, this really is the last question. All right, David Lyon. Hey, Mr. Reich, I'm a huge fan. Is there any way I could get a signed illustration? I love your illustrations and want to hang one in my home. Well, David, it's funny you ask, because remember that announcement that I was going to tell you about next week? Well, maybe you were frozen when I said that, or I was frozen. I said before, to a question about inequality for all, the movie Jake Kornbluth directed and I was in, and it's been seen by a lot of people. It got a lot of awards. The question was, is there going to be any follow-up to that? And I said, in response to that question, that there would be a follow-up, but I can't tell you about it now. But next week, I will be able to tell you about it. And I will be able to tell you also about getting my drawings. Anyway, I want to thank, once again, Zoe, Z-O-E, Umlaut, Beck, and Yael Bridge for their enormous help. I want to thank you for joining me, even though I was frozen for part of this. And you were frozen, and we were frozen out. Do you think, that, by the way, do you think that Drumpf had something to do with that? I do. See you next week at this time. Bye.